Hello there everybody, this is Krista and welcome back to Krista Chronicles, and today I am doing a VR to a video I just saw this week from Christy at Green Eyed Tarot. She did a deep dive tarot video and I loved it. I thought it was so fun. I just like this topic, I really do, which might sound surprising considering how much I talk about the fact that I really have trouble with any sort of like classic deep diving of tarot, so I also wanted to add my own little twist on this. But to start, I'll have a link down below. Totally recommend a watch if you haven't. But Christy's aim with her sort of like deep dive topic was looking at how for her she likes having kind of a like certain number of decks, it seems like certain extent that the collection gets to, and wants to like really know all of her decks. So it was kind of a thing of like slowing down, thinking about decks that, and I think it seemed like she was aiming a lot for like mass market, so things that like a lot of us might already have on our shelves that would be really interesting to get deeply into. I thought that was so cool. However, for me, when it comes to collecting and tarot, it falls into the special interest category for me. So any sort of like purposeful slowing down in that way just isn't gonna work for me. And so combined with the fact that like really like also because it's how just the special interest aspect works for me, working with a singular deck, that's it, like as a deep dive method, also isn't gonna work for me. I've tried, it's just not gonna do it. And so I was thinking about this topic because I was like, I really want to do a video on this, basically. But I was like, but how can I really like genuinely add to this conversation when deep diving in that way just doesn't, can't do it. I just can't. And so I was thinking about this concept of deep diving, and what I really liked what Christy was talking about is this other aspect of wanting to have decks in mind to deep dive for when she's kind of like, you know, she talked about brain fog a lot, how when she gets home from work, it's sort of like she just doesn't know what to do with her time sometimes. Like, it's just hard to think about the things you like to do. Totally relate to that. And so it's like when she finds herself sort of like doom scrolling, things like that, to have a deck to go to maybe like study instead of doing, you know, something that maybe doesn't make you feel as good. Totally relate to that. And so that's the angle I wanted to focus on today. So as you can tell from the title, I went around thinking about decks that if I was sort of feeling some type of way, wanting to get myself out of some kind of like rut. I call it a rut because I do get into like a scrolling rut sometimes, or yeah, I don't know. Something kind of like self-care feeling decks that I could really get into and explore, but so it doesn't necessarily need to be a structured study. Like, they're not decks where in order to really utilize them, you have to do this, but it's decks that I'm kind of like, I think getting really into them would just like feel good. I think there's things to get into, and I think they just have like this self-care lean to me. Because I think I find, again, for me personally, when I'm getting into that like doom scrolling, I don't know what to do, self-care is really the thing that I need. So, also very much inspired by, let's get into this deck first, because, yeah, the wording here was definitely inspired by this deck. So that is the Unicorn's Journey Tarot. Will she ever stop talking about it? No. Probably not, because it's so good. So, I think this would be an excellent, I'm going to call these self-care deep dive decks, because this is one that I've been wanting to do, sort of I feel like inherently I have done a deep dive with it. I think probably I just need to realize that deep diving can look like decks you just go back to time and time again and know really well. But I've been wanting to do, I guess maybe a bit more of an intentional one, where I really, really focus in on, in the guidebook you get, let's just flip to a random page, every single card has a self-worth message, which is mostly what I use from this deck. But I think it could be really a neat deep dive. Let's zoom in a little bit more. In that way, where if I'm feeling sort of stuck and want to get myself unstuck, I think it could be a really good tool to use this deck as that deep dive study, to pull a card, look at that self-worth message, and perhaps, I don't know, I could do some journaling from there and bring out my stickers. And the Kickstarter came with stickers, so there's matching stickers. I'm hoping I'm making sense with this video. I think what I am meaning to say is sort of, these decks at one way or another, I feel like by really getting into them would pull me out of, I'm going to call it like a doom scrolling funk. I don't think it necessarily even needs to be that that's what I'm doing, but you know that, I think all of us who are like on social media, I think we could all know that feeling when you're doom scrolling but you don't really want to be, but you don't really know how to like get yourself out of it. I think this deck would have so much to get into. I just picture myself pulling a card, really getting into that self-worth message. And then on top of that, even just tarot study-wise, I really enjoy the way Lisa views a lot of the cards, and so I think that's something, you know, which is in this guidebook, so that's really an interesting thing to look at too. But I picture myself then just doing some, like a lot of journaling around the card, where I could pull out my stickers and my markers and just have fun with it as this self-care practice with a very specific self-worth message to guide that. I just think that would be so much fun. And you'll see a theme with these decks where there's a lot of color, there's a lot, like a specific style of art that just, it feels right to me for this kind of thing. So yeah, that is the first one I would definitely want to get into, Unicorn's Journey Tarot. And these decks I pulled out kind of have some different reasons I think I would kind of go into a deep dive of them. So this next one is meant to represent pulling out a deck that is specific to something else you like. So like there's all decks out there based on movies, TV shows, games. I think pulling out one of those decks and really going card by card to like look at the characters, see what you know and see what you don't know, maybe learn more about that thing through going through the deck. And so for me right now, the one I've really been wanting to get into is the Neopets Tarot. Now this is the indie version, but it's out mass market, and I've been actually kind of wanting to get it just to, I don't know, check it out, do a comparison. Let me know if any of you would be interested in seeing that, because I'm just curious about the truly just like the production of the mass market one. I've heard it's good, so I'm just curious. So anyway, if you are not familiar, Neopets is an online game that I believe came out, oh, I actually Googled this recently for whatever reason, I don't know. I want to say it might have been like 1995 or something like that. 96. No, am I lying? No, let's get this right. They're having no, it came out in like 2000, I think. Because I think they're having their 25th anniversary this year, 1999. And it is so much fun. This was like my whole childhood, this and Club Penguin. I played this obsessively, but this I played for the longest, and I still go back to it. I still think it's fun. And so just from going through the deck and using it the little bit I have since getting it, it's one of those fandom decks. That's the word I was looking for, fandom. Fandom decks where it's like, you just know they did such a good job. Like, really, Neopets had such a hand in creating this deck. The images are spot on, the stories are spot on, and you get this really full guidebook. And what I was super excited to find is that it goes into each of the characters on here and their story in this world of Neopets. And so a lot of it probably are things I don't know, because paying attention to all that lore when I was like 9 wouldn't have been that easy for me. But like, the discarded plushie, oh my god. Like, it's like some of these I know, some of them I don't, and I think it would be really, really fun to get into these stories, learn where you find them in Neopets, or just like remembering, like, I know this one. And this is one of the ones where it's like, I could pull a card and go that route, but I think I could even just flip through it, read all the stories, read this guidebook just front to cover, and I think that would be so much fun. And then I could follow it up with playing on Neopets. Just like if there's a deck to a movie you really like, you could do the same thing, and then maybe you just like watch the movie after, and that's what gets you, that's the self-care for the day, and that's what gets you out of that little rut. I think it'd be so much fun. I love this deck, is bringing me so much joy. I have a lot of fandom decks, so the possibilities are all there, but this is the one that I haven't really gotten into yet, and I would really like to, and I'm so excited to. So that is the Neopets Tarot. So then my next category is similar, but to me it feels a bit more specifically nostalgia and like early childhood nostalgia. So maybe we're getting into some inner child work perhaps with this angle. But for me, that is the Wisdom of Pooh Tarot. So this kind of represents, what is the feeling I'm trying to describe here? More so like the feeling is like books you had as a child and that magical feeling that comes with rediscovering them. And just like remembering the magic that existed around reading for me as a child. And just something about these kinds of children book illustrations. I mean, Winnie the Pooh is so iconic, and I think makes most of us just like get that warm, fuzzy feeling inside. And so again, it's similar, a little different, but similar to that last category. But again, I could see this being one. I think I would maybe go into it a little bit more similarly like the first one, where I could pull a card, journal about it. I really think this would pair well with the card of the week thing I've been doing with the gentle creatures. So I could use it for that. Oop! Oh gosh, dropping the box. But this one also came with special stickers I could use, but if not, like getting special Winnie the Pooh stickers, learning about where these scenes come from. Well, they're not actually scenes from the book. These are illustrated Winnie the Pooh images to be in this tarot, so that's not the right phrasing there. But some of these, you can tell, are very much inspired by certain scenes from the books. It's not like all of these cards are just coming out of thin air, necessarily. Like, it's inspired by the books and the stories, and then maybe doing a reread of some of the Winnie the Pooh stories, or watching the Winnie the Pooh show. But I think this would be a really fun one to really get into some journaling with. Perhaps some inner child work. And again, the special sticker thing for me, I don't know, something about that brings me a lot of joy too. Like, doing something where I can, like, get my journal out, get out all these stickers and markers and stamps, and just have a field day. Sounds like so much fun to me, and they're specific decks that feel right to do that with, and this is one of them. And I think it would just be so fun to really just immerse yourself into that world of Winnie the Pooh. So, yes. Love this one. This one is the Wisdom of Pooh Tarot. Alright, this next one's in here because it's fun, but bizarre. And so I think it would really be fun to go kind of card by card with this and sort out the meanings, and that is the Zoomies Tarot. This is by the same creator as the Blooming Lovelies, and look at the packs. I've really been enjoying this one, but I think it poses a little bit more of a challenge than the Blooming Lovelies for me, because there is the tarot element added. So we still get all these kooky lines and sayings on most of the cards, but I think the challenge I've been having is then matching it to the tarot card it's put with for some of them. And it's one of those things where once I do kind of sit and think about it, it's there. So I don't mean to give off like the idea that these aren't matching up. Like, it wasn't thought about at all. Like, it was very clearly thought about. It goes in its very much in its own way, in the sense of like, and this could just totally be me personally, but really needing to sit down with that funny little line and be like, okay, how does that connect? And I think I thought of this one with this idea in terms of like a physical slowdown. This deck really makes me physically slow down. It focuses my brain on one task, which is very nice. But also it makes me laugh. Like, once I figure it out, it's always so funny. I love these illustrations. I think this would be really fun to deep dive, because I think it could be a thing of like, if you're feeling stuck, you could pull one card and really sit and think about it. And then from there you could look at some more if you want, or maybe that's good for the day. But I think it's something that really could pull me out of like just a mood or just feeling stuck. That's the term I use a lot. There's a lot of times where it's like I just feel stuck. Making the transition to something else feels so hard. And I think an activity like this would just really help pull me into something that feels more intentional. And I think that's what I'm getting at with this. But I keep saying I think. Anyway. This would be so fun to do that with, because it also just get my brain going. And I think even with the same card, there's always something to go back and think about and reconsider. It's one of those decks that comes off as so silly, but it's so smart. And I think that's what I really enjoy about it. So I think that'd be a really cool deep dive. This is Zoomies Tarot. Last but not least, this is one that I specifically picked because I think, to me, it looks at all of the cards in a really interesting way. And that's the Adventure Tarot. And this one really sold me with the guidebook. I think the deck, or the art, is really beautiful. It's not my usual cup of tea, but the guidebook. When I saw the preview entries of the guidebook, I was like, wait a second, that is so interesting. Every single one I saw, I was like, I never would have seen that card that way. And I think that is something really cool to come across. You know, with all of these decks out there, I think every single one has a different perspective, but it's cool when there's one that almost all of the cards, it gives you this perspective that you wouldn't have thought about. And so this deck is meant to represent any deck that you feel that way with, where it's like you get into the guidebook and you're like, oh my gosh, wow, that is new information to me. I really just love the voice of this deck. Something about it feels really, I don't know, fresh and new and exciting. And so I think this is one that the fun would come with the deep dive would come from really sitting down and reading the guidebook, considering what's being said, thinking about how that maybe changes my view on the card or doesn't change my view on the card. I don't know, this one to me feels like it'd be really cool as a true deep dive, like card by card, really looking at what these creators did with it. It's a really fun one. Okay, yeah, so that's my last thing I had to show today. This was kind of very spur of the moment. I had this idea and it was like one of those things where I'm like, I just need to start talking about this because otherwise I'm gonna overthink it and not know what I'm saying. So I hope this was enjoyable and made some sense, but I think to me, again, that idea of deep diving, it's this continuous journey to figure out how that makes the most sense to me, and I think this sort of self-care, like doing it in this self-care angle, I think where it's the sort of thing where there isn't pressure coming from myself to like do a certain practice around it. I think that's the big thing. When it comes to the way I see deep dives done a lot of the time is like special journals or like pulling a card every single day for this amount of time, which I think is so awesome. It's one of those like fantasy self things that I wish I could do, but I can't. And so I think this where it's like I have this group of decks that feel like I want to get more into them for one reason or another, and it's an option there for me for when I'm feeling stuck and I want to get out of that like doom scrolly kind of mood. Okay, I think that's all I got today. So, other than that, I hope you're having a fantastic day so far, and I'll see you again very soon.